Usually when we talk about a classic battle between good and evil, there's this expectation of precision, right? Like a legal contract.
Oh, absolutely. It's usually very cut and dry.
Yeah, you look at traditional Orthodox narratives, like the stories most of us grew up with or just, absorbed through cultural osmosis.
Right, the stuff that's just in the air we breathe.
Exactly. And you have the ultimate perfect creator in the sky, and then you have the wicked, rebellious devil in the pit.
Mhm.
And the text just points and says, there it is. It's binary, it's clean, and honestly, it's safe.
And it's comforting, too. I mean, we naturally gravitate towards systems where morality is highly visible.
Oh, for sure. We want to know who the bad guy is.
Right, where it's neatly categorized so we know exactly who to cheer for and who to fear. Because ambiguity is, well, it's terrifying for the human ego.
It really is. But then you step into the world of ancient Gnostic texts, and suddenly that moral compass is just spinning wildly.
It completely breaks.
It really does. We're looking at a theological landscape today that is murky, it's convoluted, and it's deeply subversive.
Yeah, and the strangest part about all of this,
What's that?
the most accurate modern translation of this murky, forbidden theology isn't happening in a church, and it isn't being debated in some seminary somewhere.
Right, it's happening on a television show,
Right.
which is wild.
Exactly. A pop culture show about a crime-solving devil in Los Angeles.
It sounds almost absurd on its face, honestly. A procedural comedy drama
Right.
about Lucifer Morningstar, running a nightclub and solving murders with the LAPD.
Well, I know it's a huge leap, but when you lay the ancient suppressed texts of early Christianity alongside the character arcs of this specific show,
The parallels are just insane.
they really are. They aren't just coincidental. They are intensely structural. Like, they are foundational to the narrative.
This premise completely blew my mind when we started researching for this deep dive.
Same here.
Like, what if this pop culture phenomenon is actually a meticulously crafted retelling of ancient mysticism?
It's a fascinating lens to view it through.
Right. So to really unpack this for you all listening, we have to talk about where these ancient ideas actually come from.
We have to go back to 1945.
Yes, 1945, near the town of Nag Hammadi in Upper Egypt. There was a local peasant named Muhammad Ali al-Saman, and he was out digging for fertilizer.
Just a normal day.
Just a normal day, and he hit something hard in the dirt. It was this sealed red earthenware jar.
And he was actually afraid to open it at first, right?
He was. He thought there might be a jinn, like a spirit trapped inside.
Oh.
But, greed won out. He broke it open, hoping to find gold. But instead, he found this collection of papyrus codices bound in leather.
And what he found in that jar fundamentally altered our understanding of early spiritual thought.
Completely flipped it upside down.
Yeah, because these were the Gnostic Gospels, texts that had been buried and hidden away back in the 4th century.
Because the Orthodox institutionalized church deemed them heretical, right?
Exactly. They were considered far too dangerous to keep around.
And they were dangerous because they completely flipped the script on who's actually running the universe.
They absolutely did.
So today, for our deep dive, we're looking at specific excerpts from that Nag Hammadi library.
We've got some incredible sources on the table.
We really do. We're looking at the enigmatic text known as Allogenes, the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Thomas, and excerpts from the Gospel of Mary of Magdala.
Such a rich lineup.
And the mission here is we are going to map the profound evolution of 3 central celestial figures from the television show Lucifer, so that's God, Amenidil, and Lucifer himself, directly onto these ancient philosophies.
And in doing so, we're going to uncover how the narrative completely reimagines the concepts of divine law.
And the nature of eternal punishment, too.
Right, and ultimately the mechanics of how a soul is actually liberated. But to do that, we have to establish the paradigm they're operating in first.
Yeah, we have to set the stage. We need to understand why the Gnostics believed the universe was fundamentally broken.
Right, because if you look at the Orthodox view, like, the book of Genesis, God creates the world, and God saw that it was good.
Boom. Done. Perfect masterpiece.
Exactly. He is the ultimate, unquestionable authority. But the Gnostic framework views the physical world not as a masterpiece, but as a prison.
A literal trap.
Yeah. In Gnostic thought, the creator of the physical universe isn't the true, ultimate, transcendent God of the cosmos.
Wait, really? So who made us then?
Well, the true divine source, often called the pleroma, or like the fullness of divine light, is entirely separated from our material reality.
Okay, so it's way, way out there.
Yes. The entity that actually built our physical world, the planets, our physical bodies, is a lower, arrogant, and honestly somewhat ignorant architect.
And they call him the demiurge, right?
Exactly, the demiurge.
So the demiurge believes he is the highest power, but he's actually just like a cosmic middle manager who lacks the full picture.
That is the perfect way to describe it. He creates the material world as a labyrinth.
And to maintain order in this flawed, highly restricted system, he uses strict, unyielding enforcers,
The archons.
right? The archons, rulers or angels whose sole job is to enforce the demiurge's rigid laws.
And their main goal is to keep the divine spark, which is the piece of the true pleroma that is trapped inside human beings. They want to keep it asleep.
Just distracted, obedient, and completely unaware.
Exactly. And this brings us right to the initial cosmic setup of the show.
Right, because if this universe is a rigged system, we have to look at the roles these celestial characters are initially forced to play.
Let's start with the architect himself, God.
Yeah, let's look at God. If we look at the Gospel of Philip, one of those key texts pulled from the Egyptian dirt, it has this brilliant warning about the language we use to describe reality.
Oh, about the names of things.
Yeah, it says, the names which are given to worldly things contain a great deception, for they separate their heart from the things which are established to the things which are not established.
That is such a heavy quote.
It really is.
Yeah.
Think about how we use the word God. We just assume that name guarantees absolute, unquestionable goodness.
Right. It's just baked into the word.
And we assume the name devil means unredeemable evil.
But the Gospel of Philip explicitly states that the archons, the rulers of this flawed world, deliberately wanted to deceive humanity using language.
They weaponize the words.
They did. The text literally says, they took the name of those that are good and gave it to those that are not good in order that by the names they might deceive him.
Wow. And the show immediately forces you to question these exact labels.
Because God, especially in the early seasons of the series, is the textbook definition of the Gnostic demiurge.
He really is. He is not a warm, loving, present father at all.
Not even close. He is completely cryptic. He's distant.
And manipulative. I mean, he communicates through these vague manipulations. He seemingly rigs the entire universe to serve a narrative only he understands.
Just look at the revelation regarding the character of Chloe Decker.
Oh, man. Yeah. The LAPD detective Lucifer falls in love with.
The revelation that God literally manufactured her.
Exactly. God sent an angel down to bless Chloe's parents, who couldn't have children, ensuring she would be born.
He genetically and spiritually engineered a human being.
For the express purpose of having her cross paths with his rebellious son. I mean, it's an astounding violation of free will.
It really is. He wrote a script and forced humanity to play their parts without ever handing out the pages.
Which is the ultimate hallmark of the demiurge.
Exactly. The demiurge doesn't value human autonomy. He values the mechanics of his own grand design.
And to ensure that design operates smoothly, he needs an enforcer.
Enter Amenidil.
The eldest angel, the demiurge's captain.
Right. In the beginning of the narrative, Amenidil is the Archon King. He is completely obsessed with enforcing the law.
And returning Lucifer to hell?
Simply because that is the role the architect assigned to him.
He represents the rigid, unfeeling structure of the cosmos.
And if we turn to the Gospel of Mary, Mary of Magdala recounts a vision where the soul is ascending through the spiritual realms.
Right, and it gets interrogated and blocked by what the text calls the powers of wrath.
These cosmic gatekeepers.
Yeah, the text lists 7 powers of wrath. Darkness, desire, ignorance, zeal for death, the kingdom of the flesh, the foolish wisdom of flesh, and the wrathful wisdom.
Look at Amenidil through that exact lens.
It fits perfectly.
When we first meet him, he operates purely on blind allegiance to the celestial hierarchy. He acts out of what the Gnostics would call ignorance of the human condition.
And a zeal for death, which basically means a willingness to enforce punishment and finality just to maintain the status quo.
Exactly. He is entirely incapable of understanding nuance.
You know, as the soul in the Gospel of Mary bravely says to the power of ignorance, "Why do you judge me, since I have not passed judgment? I have been bound, but I have not bound anything."
That's it right there. Amenidil binds others to the demiurge's will without ever questioning the morality of the law itself.
He is the ultimate hall monitor. He doesn't care why you were in the hallway. He only cares that you don't have a pass.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks. And then, standing in direct opposition to the distant architect and the rigid enforcer, we have Lucifer.
The rebel spirit.
Traditionally, the villain of the story. But through the Gnostic lens, he is reframed entirely.
He becomes the logos, the word, or the light bringer.
He is the one who looks at the architect's pre-written script, sees the strings attached to everyone's limbs, and just says, no, I refuse to play this part.
And what's deeply compelling is how the narrative treats his rebellion. Lucifer isn't rebelling because he has a desire to inflict evil.
Right, he's not just trying to cause chaos for the fun of it.
No, he is rebelling against a system that demands blind obedience over genuine self-discovery.
The Gospel of Philip notes that truth did not come into the world naked, but it came in the types and the images.
Meaning, the demiurge's world is full of false images, illusions.
Exactly. And Lucifer's entire core drive is trying to strip those illusions away.
It's why his primary superpower, so to speak, is looking into a human's eyes and asking, what is it you truly desire?
Which is the most Gnostic question you could possibly ask.
It really is.
He's not asking what society says they should want. He's not asking what the archons demand of them.
He's asking what their internal divine spark actually yearns for beneath all that heavy programming.
You know, if I think about this early cosmic setup in the show, it feels exactly like a rigged video game.
Oh, I like that. How so? Walk through the mechanics of that.
Okay, so think about a massive multiplayer online game, right? God is the absent, arrogant game developer.
Okay, tracking.
He wrote a really frustrating, deeply unfair code, and then he just logged off and refuses to patch any of the bugs.
Right, he's just gone.
Yeah. Then Amenidil is the strict server moderator. He flies around the map, banning anyone who deviates from the terms of service, just ensuring everyone stays on the path the developer intended.
Enforcing the code.
Exactly. And Lucifer. Lucifer is the hacker.
Ah, the Lightbringer as the hacker.
Yeah. He's the guy running around trying to show the other players that the game itself is fundamentally flawed, that the walls are just pixelated illusions and the rules are completely made up.
That is a brilliant translation of the theology, because the archons, like Amenidil, desperately want you to keep playing the game exactly as it was programmed.
Because if you wake up, they lose everything.
Exactly. If you realize you are a conscious player and not just a programmed avatar, they lose all their authority over you.
The Gospel of Philip explicitly states, "In this world, the slaves serve the free men. In the kingdom of heaven, the free will serve the slaves."
Lucifer is actively trying to break the slavery of the material law by making people aware of their own desires.
Which is something I really want you, listening right now, to consider for a second. Think about the rules you blindly follow in your own life.
The expectations of your career trajectory, your family dynamics.
Right, the societal scripts you've just memorized. Are you acting out of genuine moral conviction out of your own internal light? Or are you simply acting as an archon?
Are you enforcing a script written by someone else?
Yeah, are you policing yourself and the people around you just to maintain a system you didn't even design?
That is the ultimate Gnostic dilemma right there. Are you awake, or are you just running the programming?
But here's the catch. If the universe is a rigged video game, the players are fundamentally trapped.
The code can't be rewritten from the inside by the avatars?
Exactly. The only way the system actually changes is if the developer logs in, spawns an avatar of his own, and experiences the broken mechanics for himself.
And that is exactly what the creator does in the narrative.
Which brings us to the profound evolution of God. Let's really get into this.
Yeah, this is where it gets incredible. In the show, we actually see God descend into the human realm.
He literally leaves the pleroma, the divine fullness, and takes on a physical human form.
And this is not a triumphant, glorious descent where the clouds part and everyone falls to their knees in worship.
Not at all. He arrives and is immediately confronted with the messy, convoluted, painful reality of the material labyrinth he built.
There is a specific, shocking moment in the series that captures this perfectly.
God is on Earth, right? He is trying to understand his sons and these bizarre human creatures, and he ends up in a confrontation with a low-level human drug dealer.
Of all people.
Right. And the tension escalates, and the drug dealer literally slaps God across the face.
The creator of galaxies, the architect of reality, gets smacked by a street-level criminal.
And Lucifer, who has spent millennia raging against his father, who has wanted nothing more than to see his father taken down a peg.
He absolutely loses his mind with rage.
He violently retaliates against the dealer. It's such a visceral reaction.
And that reaction from Lucifer highlights a profound psychological and Gnostic truth.
Yeah.
You cannot hate something that much unless you deeply, desperately love it.
Wow. Yeah.
Lucifer's anger at God was always just a corrupted, calcified form of love. It was a desire for connection that was denied and had nowhere to go but to turn toxic.
But when he sees the absolute become relative, When he sees his omnipotent, untouchable father actually take a physical hit, bleed, and experience humiliation, the entire dynamic of the cosmos shifts.
There's this myth I was looking at regarding Mary Magdalene that illustrates this shift perfectly.
Oh, the red egg metaphor.
Yes, the metaphor of the red egg. According to legend, Mary Magdalene went to the Roman Emperor Tiberius to explain the resurrection of Christ.
Okay.
She held up a plain white egg to symbolize life emerging from a sealed tomb. And Tiberius laughed and said a human could no more rise from the dead than that white egg could turn red.
And then what happened?
Instantly, the egg in her hand flushed a deep blood red.
I love that imagery.
It's a powerful symbol, and it applies flawlessly to God's evolution here. In this analogy, God starts out as the white egg,
He is sterile, static, unblemished.
omnipotent, and totally isolated from his creation. A white egg is perfectly smooth and structurally sound, but nothing is happening on the surface.
It is theoretical perfection. It's pristine, but practically lifeless.
Precisely. But by becoming human, by losing his temper, by experiencing confusion, and by taking a physical hit to the face, God blushes red.
He outgrows his static omnipotence to gain something far more valuable.
Empathy, passion, blood, and vulnerability. He essentially cracks his own pristine shell.
Wait, hold on. Let's dig into the Theologenes text here, because this is where the philosophy gets intensely paradoxical.
Oh, definitely. Theologians gets very dense here.
Yeah, because it describes the ultimate divine source as the triple-powered one. And it says, he is a non-substantial substance, since he is a God over whom there is no divinity.
Right.
But then it makes this wild claim. It says, he is prior to perfection. He is not perfect, but he is another thing that is superior.
Superior to perfection.
Now, superior to perfection makes no grammatical sense. If something is perfect, by definition, there is absolutely no room for improvement.
It sounds totally contradictory.
Are the Gnostics just playing esoteric word games here?
It sounds like an oxymoron to our modern ears, but we have to understand how Greek and Gnostic philosophy defined perfection.
Okay, break that down for me.
In antiquity, for something to be perfect, it meant it was completed. It was finished.
Like a finished painting?
Exactly. A perfect statue cannot have another chisel mark made upon it without ruining it. Therefore, something that is perfect cannot change, it cannot grow, and it cannot adapt.
It is utterly static. I see. It's trapped by its own completeness.
Exactly. Theologians' text suggests that the ultimate divine source is superior to this static perfection because it is dynamic, it is constantly becoming.
So when God in the show realizes that his static perfection, his absolute omnipotence and omniscience, is actually a massive limitation.
A barrier preventing him from truly understanding his children.
Right, he chooses to evolve. He realizes that to be a father, he has to stop being a dictator.
Yes. There's a scene that absolutely wrecks me where God and Lucifer end up singing a duet together.
Oh, the musical episode.
Yeah.
They sing I Dreamed a Dream from Les Miserables.
And in the context of the show, it's not just a fun musical gimmick. It is a moment of shared, crushing grief between the architect and his creation.
Think about the lyrics. God is singing, I dreamed a dream in time gone by, but the tigers come at night.
He's admitting to Lucifer that even he had a vision of the universe that didn't involve all this suffering.
He is looking at the pain of the material world and realizing his design failed.
He is in the prison with them, feeling the bars.
And this realization of failure leads to God's ultimate mind-bending decision in the narrative.
He decides to retire.
He literally leaves his universe, moving to a new reality, a new pleroma, with his wife, the goddess.
Who in Gnostic terms represents the monad, the ultimate source of all creation.
Right, so he steps down from the throne. But okay, let me play devil's advocate here, no pun intended.
Go for it.
If you are the almighty creator of the universe, isn't retiring just quitting? Isn't losing your powers or stepping away a sign of weakness?
It's like a failure to manage your own creation.
Yeah, exactly.
It only appears as a failure if you are clinging to the orthodox demiurgic view of power as domination and control.
Okay.
In the Gnostic framework, relinquishing control is the absolute highest form of evolution. God steps back so his children can finally have true free will.
He stops being the demiurge who micromanages the labyrinth.
He leaves because he knows the egg has hatched. Lucifer and Amenidil no longer need a boss. They need the space to become the authors of their own destinies.
Wow.
Listen to Logan 81 from the Gospel of Thomas. Let him who has grown rich be king, and let him who possesses power renounce it.
Let him who possesses power renounce it. That is staggering. The highest display of power is the choice not to use it.
God possessed ultimate universal power, and he renounced it. That is what makes him superior to perfection.
But that creates a massive cosmic problem, doesn't it?
A huge one.
With God removing himself from the throne, there is a sudden, terrifying vacuum of power in the universe.
And nature abhors a vacuum.
Exactly. And the one who steps up to fill it must be fundamentally different from the old demiurge, or else the whole cycle of slavery just starts over.
Which brings us to the evolution of Amenidil.
Right. If Amenidil had simply taken the throne in season 1, he would have just been a new dictator.
A new Archon king sitting in the same old chair.
But the Amenidil, who eventually takes the throne, has gone through a profound, grinding transformation.
We trace his journey from the celestial enforcer who blindly followed orders to a deeply integrated, grounded being.
It's a brutal journey for him. He loses wings, he loses his powers for a while.
He is forced to live as a mortal.
And crucially, he falls in love with a human, Dr. Linda Martin.
Now, she is a psychotherapist, but in a mythological context, she acts as the psychopomp.
Okay, tell us about the psychopomp.
The role of the psychopomp is vital in Greek and Gnostic myth. Think of Hermes or Charon.
The ferryman.
Right. A psychopomp is a guide of souls, someone who walks between the realms of the living and the dead, or the human and the divine, to guide those who are lost.
What's fascinating is that Dr. Linda doesn't guide the celestial beings by giving them new rules or new laws.
No, she uses therapy. She uses the Socratic method.
She forces them to look at their own internal chaos.
Yes. She asks them the hard questions until they find their own internal light. She systematically dismantles Amenidil's rigid celestial programming just by asking him why he believes what he believes.
And together, Amenidil and Linda do something totally unprecedented in the cosmos.
They have a child, Charlie.
A half-angel, half-human baby, the literal union of spirit and matter.
The pleroma and the physical world fused into one life.
And this fundamentally shatters Amenidil's worldview. There's an infamous scene in the series, The Family Dinner.
Oh, that scene is brilliant.
God, Lucifer, Amenidil, and their brother Michael were all sitting at a normal suburban dining table eating dry chicken.
It is the absolute peak of the narrative's Gnostic, convoluted mess.
It really is.
Yeah.
You have the highest entities of the pleroma, the divine fullness forced to sit at a wooden table, navigating passive-aggressive family trauma and eating terrible human food.
And Amenidil plays the peacekeeper. He is fully embroiled in the messy, chaotic reality of human family dynamics.
God even notes that the chicken is a tad dry, which is a brilliant, subtle critique of the demiurge's own material creation.
Everything in the physical world is a bit flawed, a bit dry.
And Lucifer demands to know God's plan. He slams his hand on the table and wants the secret reason for all his suffering.
He wants the demiurge to justify the labyrinth.
And God essentially says he doesn't have to explain himself.
In the moment, it looks incredibly cruel.
It does. But it's actually God stepping back, refusing to give them a script, forcing them to exercise free will.
Amenidil is the one who truly absorbs this lesson.
He realizes that the Old Testament system, the demiurge system of top-down punishment where you break a rule and get smitten, doesn't work.
True justice requires a deep, intimate understanding of the human condition.
Which culminates in Amenidil's final arc. He eventually becomes the new god.
He takes the throne, but he makes a radical choice.
He refuses to rule from the Silver City. He refuses to sit in a distant heaven, separated from creation.
He chooses instead to be present and active on Earth. He walks among humanity.
It's like, imagine a massive multinational corporation. Yeah. The old CEO ran everything from a pristine penthouse suite on the 100th floor. He just looked at spreadsheets, completely detached from the human cost, firing people who didn't meet arbitrary quotas.
Classic demiurge behavior.
Right. But then his son inherits the company. But before the son takes over, he is forced to work on the factory floor for 5 years.
He operates the heavy machinery.
He gets his hands dirty, he sweats, he eats in the break room with the line workers, and he listens to their struggles.
So when he finally takes over as CEO, he refuses the penthouse.
Exactly. He puts his desk right on the factory floor. He manages from the ground up because he finally understands the physical, emotional weight of the work.
That is exactly what Amenidil achieves. He decentralizes divine authority.
And this aligns beautifully with the Gospel of Thomas.
Logion 22. It is perhaps one of the most famous, mind-bending Gnostic sayings.
It records Jesus saying, "When you make the two one, and when you make the inside like the outside and the outside like the inside and the above like the below, then will you enter the kingdom."
By blending the divine and the human, by bringing the throne of God down to the gritty streets of Los Angeles, Amenidil makes the above like the below.
He heals the separation between the spiritual and the material. He integrates the universe.
The system has a new, compassionate architect.
But while Amenidil takes over the management of the cosmos, the most radical, heart-wrenching transformation belongs to our rebel.
Lucifer himself.
Right, Amenidil figures out how to run the universe. But Lucifer has to dismantle the very concept of eternal punishment.
This is where we see the most profound evolution. To truly understand Lucifer's journey, we have to look at how this narrative completely reimagines hell.
In Orthodox tradition, hell is an external torture chamber built by God to punish the wicked.
It is a place you were sent to.
But the show reveals a deeply psychological, profoundly Gnostic truth. Hell is a self-imposed cell.
The doors are not locked from the outside by a wrathful God. They are locked from the inside by a human's own guilt.
This concept is staggering to me.
The souls in hell are trapped in what the show calls hell loops.
They are forced by their own subconscious to relive the moment of their greatest guilt over and over again for eternity.
And to illustrate this, we have to look at the character of Dan Espinosa.
Dan, detective douche.
Right. Dan is an LAPD detective, a flawed but generally good guy who makes some terrible mistakes.
He dies, and he goes to hell. Not because he's fundamentally evil, but because he feels an overwhelming, unresolved guilt about his failures as a father and a cop.
And his hell loop involves this bizarre, almost comical obsession with a cup of pudding.
It seems absurd on the surface, but the pudding is a vital, profound metaphor.
In Gnostic texts like the Apocryphon of John and the Gospel of Philip, they discuss how the archons create distractions to keep the divine spark asleep.
They call this mechanism the counterfeit spirit.
Right. It is an artificial ego, a collection of trivial material desires and anxieties that blind the soul to its true nature.
So Dan's obsession with a simple cup of pudding in his hell loop is his attachment to the small, familiar comforts of his physical life.
Exactly.
But how does pudding actually keep him in hell? What is the psychological mechanism there?
It acts as an anchor, facing the true depth of your own guilt, facing the terrifying reality of your own divine nature and the void of eternity that requires an ego death.
It requires looking at the darkest parts of your soul without flinching.
And that is agonizing. The counterfeit spirit offers an out. It says, don't look at the void. Don't look at your failure. Look at this pudding. Worry about this trivial thing instead.
By focusing on the material illusion, Dan avoids the spiritual reality.
He is so focused on the pudding and his identity as a cop that he forgets he's a divine spark capable of walking out the door.
The Gospel of Philip nails this when it says, people do not perceive the things which are established, but they perceive the things which are not established.
They focus on the illusions. The pudding isn't real.
Guilt is an illusion of the ego, but Dan is trapped by it. And for eons, Lucifer acted as the warden of this prison of illusions.
But his time on Earth causes intense, involuntary physical transformations that reflect his internal state.
In this universe, celestial beings self-actualize. Their physical forms literally morph to reflect their subconscious self-perception.
When Lucifer deeply hates himself, when he feels like a monster who deserves to be the torturer of hell, his horrifying devil face manifests.
But then there are the wings. He violently cuts off his own pristine angel wings because he wants to be the bad boy.
The rebel who rejects his father's design.
But they repeatedly, stubbornly grow back. No matter how many times he severs them, he wakes up and they have returned.
The wings represent the Gnostic concept of pneuma, the true, indestructible spirit, and the unstoppable truth.
You can try to self-mutilate your spirit to fit a persona that the material world expects of you.
You can wear the mask of the cynical rebel, the playboy, the devil.
But Lucifer's internal gnosis, his core, unanswerable identity as a lightbringer, forces the wings to return.
He cannot stop being an angel of light because that is his true fundamental nature.
He isn't battling God anymore. He is battling his own internal archons.
His self-loathing, his shame, his belief that he is toxic.
And this is where Chloe Decker's true narrative purpose becomes clear. She is the epinoia, or Sophia, the embodiment of divine wisdom.
In Gnostic myth, Sophia is the eon of wisdom who resided in the perfect pleroma, but she desired to comprehend the incomprehensible.
Which led to her falling and accidentally helping to create the flawed material world.
Right. She acts as a divine spark trying to awaken humanity.
And what I love about the reading of Chloe and Lucifer's relationship is that Chloe doesn't fix him.
No, the trope of the human woman fixing the broken bad boy is completely subverted here.
Exactly, she acts as a mirror. When he is physically near her, his invulnerability drops.
He can be shot, he can bleed.
The spirit touches the material world and becomes susceptible to its friction. She holds up a mirror so he can see that he was never actually broken.
She consistently loves the man, not the monster, which forces his ego to confront the terrifying fact that he isn't a monster at all.
Which paves the way for his ultimate ego death. The climax of this evolution happens in the finale of the 5th season.
Chloe is killed in a battle and her soul goes to heaven.
And Lucifer is permanently banned from heaven. The ancient demiurgic law dictates that if he ever sets foot in the Silver City, he will instantly burn to ash.
But he doesn't hesitate. He flies up into the hostile territory of heaven anyway to save her.
He fully knows the law and he expects to die. He finds her, and she is at peace, but he knows she belongs on Earth.
So he takes his mother's ring, Lilith's ring, which contains the power of immortality, and he places it on Chloe's finger so she can return to life.
He knows that by giving up the ring, he will be completely unprotected. He will be stranded in heaven and he will burn.
It is the ultimate sacrifice. But he doesn't burn. He survives.
Wait. If the demiurge's law is absolute, if the physics of the universe dictate that the devil burns in heaven, why does he survive?
Because his sacrifice is the ultimate bypass of the demiurge's operating system.
The law stated that the old Lucifer, the narcissistic, angry, self-obsessed rebel who defined himself by his opposition to God, would burn.
But the Lucifer who handed over that ring, who sacrificed his own existence out of pure, selfless, unconditional love, was an entirely new being.
He experienced a complete ego death. He killed the lower self.
Love, in the profound Gnostic sense, is the one variable the demiurge couldn't program into the simulation because love is dynamic, not static.
By completely letting go of his ego, Lucifer rewrote his own nature.
He didn't survive because God suddenly felt bad and forgave him. He survived because he outgrew the law itself.
Okay, wait. Let's put these pieces together.
Sure.
If hell is a self-imposed cell, and the doors were actually unlocked from the inside, and Lucifer has this massive realization that his identity as a monster was just a projection of his own self-hate.
Yeah, you see where this is going.
Was Lucifer essentially pranking himself for eons?
That is the tragic, beautiful, staggering irony of his entire existence.
Yes. Wow.
The grand prank of the cosmos wasn't that a cruel god condemned him to sit in a fiery pit and torture humans forever.
The prank was that Lucifer spent millions of years acting as a warden in a prison where the cell doors were already wide open.
He stayed in hell, ruling over ashes, because he felt he deserved to be there.
His role as the Punisher was just a projection of his own massive unresolved guilt. He was the warden of his own cell.
He held the keys the entire time.
He was enforcing his own punishment. And when he finally realizes this, when he integrates his light and his shadow, the resolution of the entire series falls into place.
Lucifer returns to hell, but he doesn't go back to sit on a throne of skulls.
He doesn't go back to torture people. He returns to act as a therapist.
A healer.
He turns the darkest pit of despair in the universe into a school for redemption. He uses his intimate, millennia-long knowledge of guilt to sit down with souls like Dan Espinosa, and he helps them figure out how to forgive themselves so they can literally walk out the door.
He becomes the grand psychopomp. He finally fulfills the true meaning of his name, the Lightbringer.
He brings the light of Gnosis down into the darkest, most ignorant, most painful corners of the material universe.
He teaches the trapped souls that their guilt is an illusion, that the archons of their own minds have no real power over them.
As the soul in the Gospel of Mary triumphantly declares as it ascends, "What binds me has been slain, and what surrounds me has been destroyed, and my desire has been brought to an end, and ignorance has died."
Lucifer teaches them how to slay their own ignorance.
I want to connect this directly to you listening right now, because this isn't just a breakdown of a television show.
And it isn't just an academic exercise in reading ancient Egyptian scrolls.
Exactly. How often do you act as the warden of your own self-imposed hell?
What past guilt, what perceived failure, what deep-seated shame is keeping your own cell door locked, even though the door has already been left wide open?
Are you sitting in the dark, punishing yourself for a rule you broke in a system that doesn't even matter anymore?
It is so easy to build our own archons. We internalize the voices of judgment from our parents, from society, from toxic theology, and we become our own tormentors.
We obsess over the pudding to avoid doing the hard work of self-forgiveness.
The path of Lucifer in this narrative is the realization that the key to your liberation isn't fighting a war in heaven.
It's simply forgiving yourself, dropping the ego, and choosing to walk toward the light.
As we bring all these incredible threads together, this deep dive has revealed a truly breathtaking arc.
We started with a system that seemed entirely rigid, rigged, and hopeless, the ultimate binary of good and evil.
But what we found beneath the surface was a profound, messy evolution.
We saw a distant architect God who had to crack his own pristine shell of perfection, who had to bleed and sing and step down from his throne just to learn empathy.
We saw a strict enforcer, Amenidil, who learned that true divine rule isn't about top-down punishment and blind obedience.
He learned that justice requires human compassion, a ground-level understanding of our flaws, and a willingness to sit at the table with our messiness.
And we saw a rebel Lucifer who discovered that true rebellion isn't about fighting the system with a flaming sword and a bruised ego.
True rebellion is healing the broken souls trapped inside the system. It's turning the prison into a hospital.
These aren't just fictional character beats cooked up in a Hollywood writer's room to keep a show running for 6 seasons.
They are ancient, enduring, incredibly powerful blueprints for psychological and spiritual liberation.
The Gnostics understood this 2,000 years ago, writing it down on papyrus and burying it in jars to protect it.
The convoluted messes we face in our daily lives, the grief, the dry chicken at the family dinner, the frustrations of our physical bodies, they aren't just meaningless suffering inflicted by a cruel universe.
They are the exact friction needed to spark our own internal light.
They are the catalyst for our own evolution. You can't grow in a vacuum of static perfection.
So true.
I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over. It goes back to the Gospel of Thomas, Logian 22, which we talked about earlier with an Amenidil.
Jesus says you will enter the kingdom when you make the two one, and when you make the inside like the outside and the outside like the inside.
The total synthesis of all opposites. The merging of the light and the dark, the spirit and the flesh.
The narrative ends with the celestial beings deeply, inextricably integrated into the human world.
Amenidil is a god walking among men as a police officer. Lucifer is the devil doing psychotherapy in hell. And humans like Chloe are elevated to the celestial realm.
So ponder this. What if the ultimate goal of your existence isn't to escape this messy material world, to find some pristine, sterile, divine realm in the clouds?
What if the goal is to realize that the divine was hiding in the mess all along?
That the friction itself is sacred. That the labyrinth isn't something to be escaped, but something to be transformed.
Have you been looking up at the sky, waiting for an absent architect to fix your life, when you should have been looking in the mirror to find the light bringer? Because maybe the system isn't broken. Maybe we just needed to realize that the messy, murky landscape of our own humanity is exactly where the healing begins.